Welcome to Travel Around the Block. Join Joel, Mike, and their guests as they explore how Web3 and AI are reshaping the way we journey, invest, and connect across the globe. This episode is sponsored by Lumo. Powered by AI, Lumo makes it possible for travelers and travel managers to predict, avoid, and manage flight disruptions. Visit thinklumo.com.
All right, welcome back to Travel Around the Block. This week, we're excited to have Gene Quinn join us to share his perspective on digital transformation and disruption in travel. Specifically, what innovation he's seeing now, what vaporized and materialized in the past, and what he is excited about in the coming years. Beyond being an entrepreneur, investor, and advisor, Gene is well known for his impact on travel technology as the co-founder of Tnooz, the main source for the travel industry to keep a pulse on all things travel tech. Gene was also a former chairman of Phocuswright when Phocuswright acquired Tnooz. Currently, Gene's family office at Confluence Partners LLC invests in startups and scale-ups. Gene, we're delighted to have you as one of our very first guests. Thank you so much for making time for us.
So pleased to be here. It's a great topic.
Awesome. Thanks, Gene. It's such a pleasure to have you here in our little coffee shop. Thanks for doing so. And I'm really fascinated by your background. I think it's pretty singular. And you started in traditional journalism at the Chicago Tribune, then shifted to digital media and travel tech. And Mike and I are always very fascinated by those types of career shifts. How did that happen for you?
I was sports editor of my high school newspaper. And from there, I graduated to college, University of Delaware, a twice weekly student newspaper called The Review. In my sophomore year, I had the job that you really didn't get till you were a senior as a sophomore sports editor of the University of Delaware Review. From there, I was recruited by a former colleague of mine to come to the Wilmington News Journal because they were looking for someone to work on the copy desk and start a few new projects. So I went to the Wilmington, Delaware News Journal. So twice a week, I wrote about great athletes. Once I got recruited to the Philadelphia Daily News to be a member of their copy desk team and began writing across the entire U.S. a sports television, business of television, twice a week column. So it was really a meaty personality story as much as it was a business of television sports. And that put me in a good company. It was a surprise that I got a call from a fellow AP Sports Editor Association member, George Langford, who was then sports editor of the Chicago Tribune. He said, "We'd like you to come out and talk to us. We think you could fit in here somewhere." So I basically at age 30 became the sports editor of what had been Ring Lardner's sports section, all the way back into the early 1900s. We had a sign on the wall in our editorial department that said, "Please accept my check, $2 for another annual subscription to the Chicago Evening News. Thank you very much. A. Lincoln." In his own hand. That's the launchpad to what I always thought was a major metro, big legs.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I had the good fortune in the early 1990s to make a pitch to the CEO of Tribune Company, Charlie Brumback. That was supported by my editor, Jim Squires. I said, "Charlie, I'd like to get over to the business side of media because we own newspapers, television stations, radio stations. We own the baseball team." He said, "Gene, you're the only person ever from editorial that wanted to come and learn about the business. We have a program that we support at Northwestern University called the Executive Master's Program. If you want to take 2 years and go do that, I'll pay for the whole thing." I said, "Deal." And that's how I got into a $40,000 or $50,000 a year tuition by walking around in the spirit of volunteerism to move ahead. So I went there for 2 years, and it was a fantastic experience because we used the case study method of learning. We used the Harvard Business Review's case study program as the studies that we interpreted when they were put out as problems that needed to be solved. And because I was a experienced journalist and editor. I said, let's do this. Well, so we learned an awful lot about business through their interpretive skills because they had come up from business degrees to this level where we were going to be fully accredited MBAs to go out into the world. And it was really a wonderful experience. But it told me one thing. I had made the right move leaving sports journalism and getting involved into newsroom management and now business. And when I got out, Charlie said to me, we're putting together a team of people from all over Tribune's divisions, and we'd like you to join it because we want to explore the digital side of what's happening in the marketplace. And it was plainly clear to a guy like Charlie. He saw the future and he could read the future. He had an Apple II computer on his desk in the late 1980s. On his desk in Tribune Towers.
I wish I had one right now. Love it.
Let me just summarize that a little bit. My calling was out there, and I heard it by popping a 5 3/4 disc into my pretty slow computer from America Online. One day, I had been operating as the metropolitan editor. There are 173 incorporated municipalities in the state of Illinois, and there are 5 counties we covered in the northern part of Illinois. Only one of those municipalities is Chicago, and they had a whole bureau to cover Chicago. I was responsible for the counties, and I had the first mobile telephone that most people ever heard of. It weighed 28 pounds, and the handset was 1 pound. I had to put it in the passenger seat and put a seatbelt around it because if I stopped short, it was a projectile. So it became very challenging, but very lucrative, being one of the first newspapers that changed its spots to regionalize. And I looked at that and said, you know, there's something coming here.
Gene, that comment about changing spots is so interesting because the travel industry is almost arguably going through a similar process right now to varying degrees.
I said to Charlie, you know, I saw these 2 guys coming to the newsroom with you the other day. What was that all about? He says, one was Steve Case, the CEO, and the other was Lynn Leader, the CFO of AOL. There was a third one who came in later. He was a partner at Allen and Company that was taking them public. So we had one of the first bites at the apple before they went public to make a deal. Steve is a wonderful marketer. And he said, what we need is access to audience to grow our business, especially on the younger side. And I don't know how many of them are reading newspapers, but if they're laying around the house and there's high school kids or college kids around, they're going to want to be on this. Mm-hmm. America Online would have been our first investment in something that was Web 1. AOL emphasized news coverage that we replicated from what we published in print, but we also invented interactivity that was real time, chat rooms. So I focused on the chat rooms, and that is really where we caught the fever for this. And I talked to the editors of our Orlando and Fort Lauderdale newspapers, obviously ground zero for Disney, in Fort Lauderdale, ground zero for the U.S. cruise industry in South Florida, and a jumping off point to the Caribbean and South America. And we called it, let's do what we're doing in Chicago, but different. Let's focus on travel. Let's focus on why people live there, of course, but also why people go there. The Canadian population loved it. We had lots of sign-ins from Canada. We called it Destination Florida and marketed through those 2 newspapers in those markets, but also through the AOL relationship that we had, and it got marketed on their home screens everywhere.
Can I ask, when you decided to focus on travel, what was the genesis of that?
You don't have a dog walking section in your Sunday newspaper. You have a news section, a business section, sports section, a food section, and the travel section. Every Sunday newspaper. And that's your biggest circulation week. It could be 3, 4, 5 times larger than Monday through Friday. And that's how important it was. And it was vitally important to those 2 newspapers down there. And they wanted a piece of this online stuff, but they couldn't come to Chicago to get it. They had to do it. Their metropolises weren't as big as Chicago. So we settled, we negotiated that let's focus on travel because we think there's so much that we could do there. And it took off. It really took off. Both of them, Chicago and Illinois, went through the roof. The Milwaukee Journal didn't have it. And the Madison, Wisconsin paper didn't have it. We had it. And that took off. From there, I got a call from MTV Networks recruiter. They said, we're looking for someone to coordinate taking MTV, VH1, Comedy Central onto the internet. I didn't say anything to my bosses. I just said yes to the recruiter. And then I got an invitation back. And they brought me to New York on my days off. And I sat down with Tom Freston, who headed up MTV Networks, each of the network presidents at MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, all the way down the line. And we just talked about the content that they had, the treasure trove of content that they had, and the coming wave of 13 to 18-year-old teenagers who were looking to be part of that. It was unbelievable. So that's where I stayed for quite a bit of time. And at one point, it just became 3 to 4 years. So I decided to go out on my own. And that's where I cashed out some of the winnings that I'd been able to get working at that level and started to invest in startup companies and scale-up companies that were doing Web 2 sorts of things. But that's my progression there. And in the middle of leaving the Tribune and getting into Viacom, I had met Philip Wolf at a technical conference worth attending. He said, I live in Connecticut. So, I get these channels and my kids are of the age, they look at these channels on their TV. And he said, there's some things we could probably do together in the travel business because you've got this Destination Florida idea. So you really get the marketing side and the product side. And we just got each other. And he said, at some point, you should come talk to us about joining our board and helping shape what you did there in the newspaper area in our area of travel, which was advisory services. And their most important thing at the time was surveys and polls. And that the 30 years of polling this question, where do you get the most reliable information before you go on a trip? Overwhelmingly, friends and family. Not media, friends and family. Trusted people who went there and said, the milk didn't make me sick. The water didn't make me cry.
Sometimes still the case now, but we got obviously social media influencers telling you too. Gene, just for any listener that's not really quite familiar with Philip Wolf, can you quickly share who he was?
Well, first of all, rest in peace, Philip. He passed away in 2021. He was the best friend I ever had since high school, and a business partner par excellence, and his wife, Carol, and he built the Phocuswright business. You're not going to find too many $3,400 for 4-day conferences in the travel business. And
so true.
You'll learn a lot if you pay that and go there.
Absolutely.
And you'll make a lot of contacts. To this day, Lorraine Cilio is still a freelance contributor to their business, which is now part of North Star Travel Media, which is a whole conglomeration of B2B and other travel media companies. And Tnooz sold into that when we ran out of runway as a B2B startup. And the one other competitor in that marketplace was and still is Skift, a brilliant project by Rafet Ali and all the journalists that are over there too. So media has never quite left my bloodstream. Philip was one who asked me to come aboard, and I said, "Do you mind if I put some money into the company?" And I did. And I became chairman of the board through the sale of the company to North Star Travel Media.
Gotcha. So if I could kind of rewind back really quickly, is you were a co-founder of Tnooz.
Me, Philip Wolf, Kevin May, wonderful British journalist, out of the biz now. Fred Lalonde, Hopper, and a few other folks who we asked to come aboard. That was the board and the founders, the true founders, and Philip, of course. Yeah, we had a good run. We founded in 2009, and we sold to North Star in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely an avid reader, especially when I was doing my hospitality operation technology days as well. And I found it super interesting on our side conversation in the past, where you told me how the name Tnooz came about.
Said, what's a Google? What do you guys do? We're going to write about travel technology news for the industry. He said, why don't you call it Tnooz and spell it this way? Capital Tnooz. I mean, we had t-shirts and hats out to wazoo in 2 months, you know?
I love it.
When you look at the original logo, it was in red and bordered in black. It was a double T, travel technology news. Tnooz. That's what it was. I ran 37 hackathons with Tnooz personnel around the world over 4 years.
And this hackathon of all the travel tech startups.
It was all about travel technology. So travel marketing, travel advertising, travel business development, tools that would take your travel agency to the next level, to a new audience. You know, that was a phase of Tnooz that I enjoyed the most because
the hackathon, did it have a component where big travel tech, let's say like Amadeus, Sabre, Oracle Hospitality.
They were my sponsors.
Figured they participated.
A chunk of that money went to the prize pool, and a chunk of that money was advertisement sponsorship for us. So it made money on both sides. It was a B2B, and it was a B to competitor. You know, business paying the competitors. So we had sponsors were Expedia, all the GDSs, for Travelport, Amadeus, and Sabre. Sabre loved it. They just loved it. Of all the organizations, they were the most gearheady at Sabre. Terry Jones came out of Sabre, and he's a gearhead, really smart guy, and was a mentor and still is a mentor of mine.
That's amazing.
If you look at today's environment compared to some of those previous environments, I'm curious how the travel tech startup ecosystem looks to you these days. Are you licking your chops going, oh, this is my investor moment? Or are you thinking you'll wait for another wave to come? How does it look from your point of view today?
Invariably, I wait for someone to refer me to someone who calls me and says, are you interested in this? And that's where the first couple of meetings are just on me. Tell me what you're doing. There are so many people out there who just say, pop a pill. Oh, AI. They're like gummy flavors. What do you mean by AI? Okay. What do you mean by it? Here's what I mean by it. Things that search large language models don't hallucinate and bring back valid, credible, and accurate information to make a decision. That's the journalist in me. If your mother says she loves you, we used to tell young reporters, check it out and get the spelling of her name. What are the first 3 letters of assume?
Right.
ASS. Don't be one. That was what a newsroom was like. It really was.
Yeah.
Like you saw on TV.
And Gene, do you have a feeling that the folks leading the charge on AI could use a little bit of that journalistic fact-checking ethos, or is that a wrong guess on my part?
My flip answer is too many boards, too little time. Google has to search good information, and you get bad stories. You get bad term papers. You get bad 5-part series on investigative reporting, because anybody can do this on Wiki, and they become a genius. The databases are not verified and accurate. And I think that's part of what leads to some of these hallucinogenic things that happen. I have no fear that technology will have its bumps along the way. But ultimately, AI isn't about taking over the world. AI is about taking over our drudgery as working within that world. The world needs to be corrected and fact-checked all the time.
Do you see a difference, Gene, between AI generated content and human generated content? Like let's say just hypothetically, the identical sentence was produced those two ways. Is there a difference in some sense between those outputs? And if there is a difference, what is that difference?
I can't give you a straight answer, but I can give you an analytical answer. I need to read more than one sentence to come to that conclusion. I need to read a page of copy or 2 pages of copy. I don't need to read the whole book. But there will be clues and triggers that come off as shortcuts or incomplete, not by intent. A shortcut is intentional. A mistake is not intentional. And the machine didn't make the mistake. It just read someone's mistake that was recorded in a large language model. Whether it was a piece of code or a birth date of Abraham Lincoln, it didn't matter. It's still a mistake. And it's demonstrably a mistake. So there will be AI bots to check challenges they had with a large language model that was not as clean as this large language model. So it's the same way knowledge in the universe progresses. So you just can't go back to the clippings in a library in Tribune Tower and look at 1827 for, what the penicillin recipe was back there. It wasn't invented in 1827. So those are the types of goofy things that could happen if AI bots are turned loose prematurely. There needs to be bots that do the vetting before the bots that do the privilege of making money at vetting. And the better the vetting, the better the license fees will be to the owner of the vetting AI. I can't wait to say well done to most of the AI things that I suspect I'm going to be looking at in the next 10 years.
As every industry sort of adapts to AI, I'm curious to get your perspective on what's unique about travel as an industry, and if anything, and should that uniqueness influence how we all adapt to AI, or is it just like any other industry?
Physical disruption during a business or leisure or ceremonial, like a honeymoon event, is irreplaceable. You can go again, but you can't replace what you intended to do the last time. If it screws up by a bot saying the plane takes off in 35 minutes and it took off 42 minutes earlier, you ain't making your meeting that day. That's a big deal. So what I think about travel is that the experience is what it's all about. There's the money, you like to fly, take trains, take buses, or you're afraid to fly. Where do you want to sit on the plane? There's all that stuff. But there is nothing more invigorating than going to a place you've never been before and learning about it. Whether it's a business relationship, a honeymoon, or your first time at a Wembley Stadium football game. Travel's a joy. It can be clunky, but it could also be disastrous in terms of business, in terms of relationships. I've had more arguments about where do you want to go before we decide where we want to go with my wife. And I'm married 50 years. That's a lot of talks.
So Gene, if I could frame this way in terms of AI and travel, if we look at, let's say, the traveler journey from, inspiration to research planning to booking pre-stay, check-in, check-out, post-stay, and so forth, all of that in the entire cycle, you think AI agents will have a play?
I think they'll have a play tactically, but before that, the wise couple or the wise family will have done their own research in some way, which may use a different flavor of AI that works in library length books on the history of country X, Y, or Z. But the tactics are really the nuts and bolts and the easiest things to do. I mean, there's only flights a day. There's only departures from, a rail station a day. There's only so many hotels if you want to stay on that casino street. There's all of those riddles that need to be sorted. And I think, why not AI?
So if I rewind back to 10, 20 years, we all lived through the internet days, the mobile days, and the cloud. Travel and hospitality were somewhat laggards in adopting that next generation, building a mobile app, if it's going to be, a web-based or hybrid, so forth, and then adopting the cloud, how's our data security and privacy and so forth. But do you feel like there's more of a excitement for AI on the supplier side?
All the boxes
suppliers
are crying for AI. You tick them all, and not every one of them, but enough. What you were talking about when you set up the question, it's called agency. Travel was entirely dependent on people who knew more than you about where you wanted to go because you represent a type of character. And your spouse or your girlfriend or your family represent a type of family. Had to do with how much money you wanted to spend, whether you went warm or cold, athletic or loungy, educational or exploratory, all of that stuff. And that's the brilliance of the human brain that has trained and traveled. They don't just see what it looks like and visualize it. They tell you, go to this restaurant because the fish is fresh. And there's a value to that. That can be captured and put into an AI engine. And it's still reputable, unless the restaurant burns down and you don't update the AI engine, but you do tell the travel agent, by the way, that burned down, so you can't use it in your planning anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, it's that type of analysis. Travel lends itself to because it's such a horizontal experience with different waypoints in that experience.
I want to get your perspective on if you feel the travel suppliers are demanding from the technology providers to upgrade, enhance their tech stack with AI components, or are the travel suppliers themselves building because they're enabled by the likes of, let's say, Amazon, Bedrock, etc., to be able to say, hey, you have all this data, we have all this large language model, we have a team of consultants, we can help you, implement AI for this and that, versus, let's say, oh, you have a property management system or a passenger system that you want AI to be incorporated, and you have to wait for the tech providers to build that and release it. So I'm trying to understand, where do you see that coming from, the demand?
If everything you said, or just one thing you said, is a problem, perhaps AI can fix it, but some organization of the LLMs needs to occur before the AI can go to work. Because the AI isn't smart per se. It's smart at what it's been programmed to look for. And the program of what the AI has to look for needs to be compatible almost exactly with what is in the large language model to answer what it's looking for. I make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it is going to take a form of agency to create those large language models that don't result in not funny mistakes. Because you don't want to miss a night if you're on the road, because the trip planning bot that you use didn't book one for that night. Hard to answer because nobody's been successful at it yet.
Gene, just a couple of quick reactions to that. One is you're underscoring that travel is a pretty high stakes environment for AI. For somebody, it might be a matter of, is that hotel there and standing and safe, or is it maybe burning as we speak? And the other thing I just wanted to say is you caused me to see something I've never seen until just this moment, and I wanted to share it with you, which is that having been in this industry for decades, we've all heard the term travel agency. It's such an unremarkable phrase that we've all heard it so long, we don't even hear it anymore, travel agency. But just now when you were speaking, I had almost a Back to the Future moment where suddenly travel agency had more than one meaning. And I think you're really underscoring that agency isn't an old word. It's a key to the future kind of a word. And for what it's worth, I just wanted to share that I've never heard travel agency the way I just did.
There's many different lowercase a agencies. The trouble with travel is it's been so dependent on one definition of what an agency is. I mean, OTA, online travel agency, that's a very pale comparison to a really crackerjack human travel agent. who's got an encyclopedia here and can match your heart with his or her heart at how you like to travel. That's hard to do in a database. Hard to do.
Yeah.
That's the issue, the database. A large language model isn't large enough because it doesn't have what makes you feel comfortable if you get the wrong answer. And it's masquerading as the right answer. So that's the sensitivity of it. People hate it when it rains on one of their vacation holidays. You don't want to mess with somebody's downtime. And that's what the bots have to be aware of. And not only come from experience of messing up a few trips. But I do think it's about large language models more than it is that what a bot can do.
Gene, do you think in the near future, within the next 5 years, we will all have our own dedicated travel agent, AI travel agent that knows who you are, how we like to travel, what kind of experiences we want, and then be able to go out to the web and constantly 24/7, 365 monitor for the best deal?
I'm suspecting that people will wind up with favorite engines that they can use to make this happen. It could be the same exact engine that you use and I use, but we may have very different tastes in what we're asking it to do. As long as it's 102% correct, what I want, it works. And the proof is in who's going to go first. Try to create, AI travelagency.com, whatever.
Wow. So refreshing in a way because it gives me that perspective of looking back when we talk about AI and let's say I'm thinking about when we're looking at business intelligence and analytics, we talk about, bad data in, bad data out.
Machine learning.
And now we talk about personalized AI recommendation search. It's kind of like back in the days when we had browser wars and which browser you want to use. And it's kind of like which language model you want to use for your own personal. So it's interesting, like the shift in technology, but the human nature is still there.
That's why we can't fully define Web 4 yet, because people have, I think, pushed it into Web 3 as a PhD of Web 3. I don't look at it that way. It's the progression through 3 into something wholly different. There's only so much information, and it's finite. Now, what hasn't happened tomorrow hasn't happened yet. So it can't be in the database of yesterday. And that's travel is that sensitive. I mean,
right.
How many times have you remembered something from your youth? There used to be a gas station there and a fast food restaurant there. And you go there and the whole thing's a big parking lot. And now it's totally different. It changes.
Gene, when you talk to industry players, if they were to ask you, simply explain what is Web 1, what is Web 2, what is Web 3, how do you make it easy for them to digest?
Web 1 was the prairie schooners striking out from the squalor they lived in to try to find a bigger piece of earth that they could farm in and raise their families and feed them. That's Web 1. Web 2 is the invention of the car, or the truck, or the railroad. Web 3 would be flight. Web 4 would be live it in your brain, if you can imagine what the feeling will be, and then experience it in real life, because either the human or AI agent has not read your brain, but read enough of the databases to interpret what you want from your brain in enjoyment or business trip, travel. So I look at it that way. It hasn't been written yet. The reason I love news is because it's always happening. But you want perspective and you want to write a book. That's a lot of head scratching. That's a lot of note taking. That's a lot of typing and ripping up pages. The book just doesn't appear on a library shelf. I look at the library and I see eons of history of how we write things down so they'll be remembered after we're gone. This is much more dynamic and personal. One book is going to feed the minds of hundreds, thousands, or millions of people. But your trip is your trip, not their trip. They may be sitting in the chair next to you going to the same place, and you may see them at the beach. That's fine. But you're not experiencing their trip. You're experiencing your trip, your kids, your spouse. It's It's a customized experience that lowers one's blood pressure and in brief spots, maybe on a high rolling down stroke of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And
I
sure,
love the way that you described it in that overarching story format, because typically for me, whenever I try to dumb it down, I feel like I'm actually making it more complicated when I say, okay, Web 1 is read only, and then Web 2 is read and write, because now you can contribute, you can create like blogs and post videos and so forth. And then Web 3's ethos is like ownership of the internet, whereas previously it was supposed to be decentralized, but it then became centralized by the likes of Google and Facebook. And it makes me wonder right now, because you are looking at Web3, you're looking at this next generation of startups that impacts travel and beyond, maybe even media. And that's the question is, what are you personally excited about Web3? Why are you excited about Web3? And what do you look for? Yeah.
Let me not answer the specifics of that question. I've figured out that I don't have to travel everywhere in the world. What I have to do is understand how to distribute the services in a way that people will enjoy them so much that they'll want to travel again, even if it's not to this location, but because I used a service that helped me do it, whether it's an AI bot or a really good travel agent, that gives advice that can save you frustration and save you a lot of money too. So that's one, that's travel. Media is my right to tell you something shall not be abridged. And then there's financial services. Now, it's not just financial returns. What is the advice I need on the various products that earn those returns? And how is that changing depending on new entrants into the marketplace like cryptocurrency?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to have a piece? I don't want any crypto. I'm not buying it yet. I'm not buying it ever, maybe. I like the weight of gold, and I like the fact that it's backed up.
Gene's a gold bug.
No, this is the only gold I own right here. 54 years old, 3 years of engagement.
It's priceless.
50 years
Priceless.
of marriage. The person who has the other part of it, she's a keeper. I don't know why she thinks I'm a keeper, but she does. So anyway, and then there's the FinServ part of it. So many people are intimidated by being poor. How am I ever going to get my kid to college? But there are a whole other cohort of people, and maybe these folks, after they learn the rules of the road, are intimidated by being successful. So how do I stay? How do I keep what I got? And then let interest rates determine where it goes from there. So there's FinServ, TravelServe, and MediaServe. I consider them all services in a service economy. All digitally tied, but not digitally driven. You don't digitally drive the price of gold. You just record whatever markets are paying for it. And you put it in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That, to me, being at the intersection of those pieces of life, there are many others. I don't consider my fly fishing career to be part of travel. I consider it to be part of my psychology medicine. It calms me down. I release everything I catch. I only eat what I buy in a store or a restaurant. Everything goes back to nature. I'm a fierce conservationist.
So, Gene, I love the fact that, you have confluence in your ethos of family office. And one thing I'd like to ask you is, are you seeing anything interesting, or what's your thought about the confluence of Web3 and AI?
I have to see a lot more of the AI operating successfully without hallucinations and with some verifiable authentication of the information that is searched by the bot and discarded as irrelevant or seized upon as syrupy good. And where do the hallucinations, mistakes, or the veracity mistakes come from in that last statement? So I would love to be involved in more learning about
Mhm.
where the location factors are happening in the large language models.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's where I am with it, is I'm waiting for it to come to me.
Yeah.
So I can go to it. And that's the Web4 version of AI. And I think it's worth talking about and getting new ideas. Maybe people who want to share the horizon that they can see past because of
Mhm.
things they've researched and maybe things they've invented. I'd be more than happy to refer a highly technical thing to a VC or to a private equity investor. I'm not loaded with cash. I'm loaded with the promises of monetizing in 10 different companies. And some of them are scale-ups. Some of them are pretty early startups. But they represent one of those three sectors that I was talking about. And I don't do any pure technology investing. Applied tech, I do investing in the application of those technologies as services.
I know it's hard, Gene, to give broad brush advice without knowing the particulars, but in general, to the extent this is even possible to do, I was curious, what advice would you have for startup founders in this particular moment in time, or for that matter, for incumbents that are facing this time of rather great change? What advice might you have for a founder or an incumbent in this particular environment?
Number one is, what problem does your product or service solve? I'm going to sound like a VC here. And how important is that problem to how big an addressable market that sets the global context? In my case, it's travel and serve media. And after that, who is the customer of that problem? And how would they define the problems they have, not to mirror the problem that's being solved at the high level of the inventor, but the application of that to some form of an output service. Software as a service, right? The cloud is brilliant. So you don't need a box sitting next to you that needs a battery or an electric bill. And that's the way VCs think generally. And private investors think, like, moving the piece parts of successful businesses around, including in their own private equity portfolios, or maybe being a raise your hand if you would like to participate with us in this, because we're going to open up, 50% of the investment to 3 other chunks of capital. That's how I think. The financial part of what I learned in business school was very rigorous.
That's amazing. That makes me want to ask you this real quick, Gene. Your personal investment thesis, if you will. If you say, Mike, I know you probably refer, I don't know how many startups I referred to you in the past, Gene, but let's say I have 10 startups that, but then you say, Mike, here's my filter. This is what I would be interested in engaging on. What would those be?
What problem do you solve? Who's the customer of that problem? What is the size of the addressable market of those potential customers, not ones you think you have? And which ones do you think you have? And how big is that go-to-market market? And then the details of how the business is built and works will inform future strategies of how to seek capital partnerships, how to seek expertise. Scratch my back, I'll scratch your back business deals. Barter deals, softwares like that. I'll share my ideas with you if you share a discounted license to your product with me. I can use that to chronicle what my progress is to my investors. Yep. Those types of deals. It's really just a marketplace.
Gotcha.
If you don't need shoes, you don't wear a new pair of shoes, go find another new pair of shoes. You got a new pair of shoes, wear them until they wear out.
Right. Yeah. How big is the problem? How painful is the problem?
I've had so many entrepreneurs come to me and say, this is my idea, and it's going to make, $2 billion because this guy did it over here differently and made $4 billion.
Right.
And I say, well, that sounds good. I think you should go find someone to help you do that. And I'm as nice as I can about it, but that's not what you want to hear. What's the problem? How do you fix it? Who are you fixing it for? How many of them are there in the marketplace? And who else did you need on that team? Because they're not yours yet. It's their team to make that happen. And that's where you become invaluable. That's a recipe for me. If I hear something that's a tingle to it, I want to know more. And I'll say to them, hey, I don't know whether I'm ready to come your way or have you come my way. I'd really like to have a conversation with you about that. I was an investor in a company called Buzz Agent, which was between Web 1 and Web 2. This was a marketing company in Boston that created an army of reviewers by making products available for sample or for a deep discount to buy, and then ask them to journal what they thought of the products and sign their name. But what they did was they journal using accurate information because it was vetted by the team within Buzz Agent. And it was surprisingly effective for certain things and not other things.
Gene, you've been so gracious in sharing your time with us and all the interesting stories. This has been amazing. I feel like we'll probably have to do a few other sessions just to capture everything that you have.
I could go on for 2 hours, but you don't want it to be 2 hours. Nobody will listen for 2 hours.
Well, you never know. Maybe
there's so much more to talk about on the cusp of what's going to happen next. So you may want to update this throughout the year several times.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking too. What do you think, Joel?
Sure. This is absolutely, Gene. Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and I get a lot more specific about them when I can sort through what is current, because I don't want to give any confidential information away, but I also don't want to make a mistake about what I think about them without talking to them in the last week. So, anyway, but it's fun. It really keeps me young.
I think what we could do is when that potential public or successful exit event happens and you want to bring the founder on and we can have a chat about the journey that they have and your involvement. But with that said, Gene, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Really appreciate it.
I'd appreciate you asking. But and I do quite a bit of speaking. So, and a lot of that's quite spontaneous. Somebody needs somebody to fill in on a webinar or something, and I just jump in. As long as it's something I can talk about.
Gene, if I could, I seriously, from the bottom of my heart, this is like a feast of insight and such a pleasure. What a blast. Thanks for being here, and let's continue the conversation over time, and really a pleasure. And I wish you happy fly fishing till next time, and thanks for everything. Thanks so much.
Likewise, stripers are running off the northeast coast for the false albacore. I don't have a boat. I got to figure out find a new friend with a boat. So,
well, we look forward to some awesome pictures from you in the future when you do that.
Don't get me started on pictures. I got a lot of big fish I can show you.
Awesome.
It's a lot of work there. Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Gene.
Me. I'm happy to keep going with you, and it was very enjoyable. Memory lane works.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for your support, Gene.
Thanks for joining Joel and Mike for another episode of Travel Around the Block. If you have any questions or topics you would like to see discussed on the show, or if you'd like to be considered as a potential guest or sponsor, please reach out to us at hello@travelaroundtheblock.com. And of course, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Wishing you a wonderful day wherever you are around the block.